I'm having thunderstorms right now. So yeah, if we cut off,
then yours are coming north. Um, well, welcome to Red's Life anyway. Place to get the sight, sound, smells, taste. You know what to do. Smash the like button. And we have Joel Fishman, the best-selling author, Joel Fishman. Also the Substack author of Puttock. Am I pronouncing it right? Puttock Hill.
Puttock Hill, but the name of the Substack is Backyard Stewardship.
Oh, that's right, Backyard Stewardship,
Yeah,
which is all about Puttock Hill. And every time I read this wonderful Substack, I keep thinking, Salisbury Hill.
Well, first of all, I don't believe that you read it. I think you just click like to be supportive of fellow authors. I think maybe you read the first sentence. Sometimes I get a like from you on that thing within seconds of it going out.
La 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 la. You know what?
By the way, it's appreciated. I would rather you like it than read it.
I
like both, but both is good too.
I do read because especially the ones about like when you're like, don't mow your lawn.
I know that appeals to your sense of writerly laziness, right? Hey, cool.
Yeah, yeah, good. I don't have to mow the lawn.
The greatest, in my opinion, the greatest television example of subtext was in the first season of True Detective.
Right. My favorite. Everybody's favorite.
Right. And so Woody Harrelson is fooling around behind his wife, blatantly not coming home night, right?
Yeah.
And what's his name comes on the scene. I just forgot the name of the actor, but he's a great actor.
The New Orleans actor.
Yeah, anyway, he comes on the scene.
My coffee hasn't kicked in yet.
Yeah, I know. What the hell's his name? Anyway, I'm not going to waste time.
Yeah, what is his fucking name?
He does the car commercials too.
Yeah, the Lincoln.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not even clicking. It's not even clicking.
I'm sure we could pause everything and Google it, but never mind. He comes. Woody Harrelson comes back from sleeping with his girlfriend, spends the night, rode hard and put up wet, and the other guy, whose name will occur to us, when we hang up, is he sees this mower out and his lawn has been mowed and there's this bucket of grass clippings, and he picks up the grass clippings and he looks at them. He runs them through his fingers and he goes inside. He sees the guy's truck or whatever car, and he goes in, and there is what's his name with wearing this. What we used to call a wife beater, we're not allowed to call it a wife beater anymore, except that, of course, this being a noir conversation, maybe we can.
Right.
Like sweat dripping and talking to his wife, and he doesn't even say hello to his wife. He goes up to the guy and says, "Can I talk to you?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's outside. He goes outside and he says, "You mowed my lawn?"
Right. Oh yeah.
Like, yeah. Well, it needed mowing. He's like, "You don't mow another man's lawn."
Right.
That is the greatest line of subtext I think I've ever
seen. Excellent writing. Yeah, I remember that. I certainly do. Yeah, you don't mow another man's lawn.
Yeah, and that is for a lesson for you beginner writers.
Oh, the thunderstorm might already be affecting us. Let's see. I'm like 3 for 3 on these podcasts with the weather being a factor. We had, let's see, I had, who did I have on last? Well, anyway, I did one yesterday, and with Troy Lambert and Frank Scalise, and the weather was a factor on that one. Now today, weather's going to be a factor with Fish. Let's see if he comes back on pretty quick. I could bet you his internet went out. All right, so how's everybody's day going? I said day go. All right, that's not nice. All right, yeah, he clicked out. He'll come back on. Uno momento. I guarantee it. So here's what I've been doing today. I've been working on a Kickstarter for Chase Baker, for the launch of Chase Baker and the Nazi Time Machine, which is done. I'm just reading it over and doing final copy edits. But let me tell you something, putting together a Kickstarter, a Kickstarter that I know will be successful is harder than writing the novel. Absolutely harder than writing the novel. It's that much more complicated. Just bear with me a second. I'm going to see if Fish is trying to get me on email. So bear with me 1 second. No, he's not. All right, so it's not. Here he comes.
I think my
Oh, see the storms. The storm is.
my thing reset.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sorry about that.
I
Could
just,
happen again too.
I kept rambling to the crowd.
I don't know where we cut off. Matthew McConaughey was the
Matthew McConaughey. That's it. That's why I
guy
can't remember.
wearing the tank top,
Right.
T-shirt, and anyway.
So Joel is, for anybody who doesn't know, Joel wrote a terrific novel about Typhoid Mary. It was a fiction. I've been suggesting to him that he write himself a narrative nonfiction about it because I think it would do amazingly well. Especially, all he has to do is sell thousands of copies in New York City, where this thing takes place.
Yeah,
That island's still there, man. People visit it. It's creepy.
I know. Well, people can't visit it. It's off. So first of all, I wrote it under a pen name. I should point that out. It was Dana I. Wolf.
Right.
2 and secondly, no, that island, North Brother Island, is set aside like as a nature preserve that you can only visit with like guided permission. It's not easy to get onto that island, which was part of the premise of the horror novel. But yeah, man, I'm well, first of all, I was telling you off camera that the difference between fiction and nonfiction is that nonfiction is about facts and fiction is about the truth.
Right.
And
I thought that was so profound. I was like, you didn't make that up.
I know, I did not make that. I made that up. Yes, I did. It's mine. It's original. The funny thing is, years ago I was writing for this this blog called The Nervous Breakdown, I think, and I wrote this piece and about I guess like this, that it's overstated that people should write what they know.
Right.
That because we're all humans, and if you can conceive of it, some human probably did it, right? And I quoted Henry James. Henry James, the novelist, said, "In order to write about dying, one only needs to have had a bad cold."
Excellent.
And I thought that was great. I quoted it, right? And so some years later, I was like, I don't know what possessed me, but I just thought maybe I was going to recycle the quote or something, and I Googled the quote, right, to try to find out like where did he say it, when did he say it,
and there he goes again. Uh-oh. This might be. Come on back, Fish. Henry James. Thunderstorms. Okay, so to get back to what I was saying before, if you have ever tried to write or put together a Kickstarter, it's more difficult than writing the novel itself. But the Kickstarter we have going for True Pulp, we are more than 200% funded. And I think by the end of it, because we have like 20 days left, we're going to end up being like 300% funded, if not more. So, and my co-editor, Troy Lambert, put it together. He did the heavy lifting on that part, and I've been doing the heavy lifting with the interviews, which have been going not so swimmingly the past couple of times because of the weather. In any case, what you see is what you get. But they work, and I'm discovering that readers, there is a certain community of readers that go to Kickstarter that don't go to Amazon and that don't go to Kobo or Barnes and Noble and all that stuff. They go to Kickstarter. And why do they do that? Because they get one of a kind items, one of a kind gifts, and you will with Chase Baker and the Nazi time machine. So anyway, back to Joel.
I guess we now know what happens when you don't pay your Verizon bill.
Yeah, see, you know what? You know, writer living on the edge, man.
I feel like I'm living in the rainforest. We did have like a week of no rain and it got hot, but other than that, it seemed to
it has been that kind of money. Listen, before you get knocked off again, I just want to plug our project together. Joel has arguably the best story in True Pulp.
Oh, you're too kind.
It's that good though, and I'm not blowing smoke. And I've actually read it, to be honest. I actually read it.
I know you read that one
and enjoyed it. I'm going to be submitting it for a Derringer Award, so fingers crossed. But
excellent, go for it, man. I never submit for awards.
Well, this one I'm going to submit on your behalf.
I'm happy for you to do
co-editor of True Pulp too. But we're happy to have Joel, and we've been doing a series of videos featuring each author, or as many authors as we can get. We have a Kickstarter. This is the first, at least, noir, mystery, crime, pulp anthology that I know about that has been supported by a Kickstarter. Unless, you guys out there, if you can tell me about another one, I'd like to know about it. But we are over 200% funded right now. We're like 205% funded. And Joel, we have you to thank partly for that, because you suggested some of the reward tiers, and it's really helped out. Like Joel was like, I know, let's do like a signed hardcover edition and put it up there for a certain amount of money, and maybe some collectors will go after it. And we've had at least two.
Was that my idea? I don't even remember. You gave me a lot of credit for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we had a meeting, remember?
I do remember the meeting. I remember the meeting with you and Troy, and I also remember saying, don't offer that for too little money, or we'll lose our shirts mailing it all over.
Yeah, it's the truth. It's got to go all over the place, all over the country, all over the world, really, because we have Paul Brazil in it, and he's in Poland, so it's got to go to Poland.
Oh, right? In Poland, did not know that.
Yeah. So anyway, the deal is, for like 90 days, there's going to be an edition of True Pulp with a different limited edition cover. When those 90 days are up, then the normal mainstream edition of it will come out. And by the looks of it, paper and audio also. So, and in fact, things are going so swimmingly that we're getting ready for the next one, which will be True Romance, in the Quentin Tarantino sense of the title.
Wow. I got to put my thinking cap on for that one.
Yeah, yes, you do, because we'd love to have another story from you. But back to your narrative nonfiction thing, you were talking about Henry James. So are you thinking of writing a narrative nonfiction?
No, I'm not thinking of, because I'm too lazy. That would require research, and
this is why I'm not a reporter, a good reporter, or a good journalist, because why I'm a low-hanging fruit nonfiction guy, because if I can't get my three sources online, then I'm not about to start making calls.
Right. Likewise, the second it starts to be like real work, you may as well just go work for the man, right? I mean, like, what's the point?
But I go back to construction. I swear to God, I just want to write fiction. I just want to sit there and regurgitate the craziness that goes on in my brain.
Well, it's funny. I've been working on this thing with Hollywood that I can't really talk about yet, and of course, it's just chasing another rainbow. It's been my life chasing rainbows, but I'm closer to something in Hollywood than I ever have been before, which does not mean I will make a nickel, um, but it occurred to me, like, you take these meetings and, like, everybody, other than the agents who always have to dress up, um, all the writer types and even like the producer types, they're all like sitting
Right.
around in torn t-shirts and whatever. And my theory on why is it's sort of like, well, if I can't make a living, at least I can have one of the perks of being a
Right.
writer, which is like I don't have to dress up. Right? That's
And
a
you can
perk you
sleep
can
in
have
it.
right away. The day you declare yourself a
Right.
writer, you can just start walking around like a slob. And I don't, I shave every 3 days. I happen to be
Yeah.
clean shaven
Look at me.
today.
Yeah. And you can
Right?
sleep. You can sleep in on Monday morning.
Sleep in. At least get the perks.
Yes. And
So,
those are major perks. I mean, could you imagine, like, like, oh my God, I have to go to work today. Like I just.
well, I can't imagine because I used to. Did have a period in my life when I did that. But
Me too. Yeah. I mean, I had a full-time job for. Let's see. I graduated college in '86, June of '86, and then I didn't go to grad school till the beginning of 1995. So about
that's
9 years full
yeah.
time, and I worked full time through grad school, and then I didn't get my first book deal till January '99. So I worked like 13 years or whatever, and
Yeah, about right.
and I went back. I'm talking my father's construction business, right? I went back. I had two really low periods where there was just nothing coming in,
Right.
and I went back twice. Each of them were 6-month periods. The first was like, I don't remember, early 2000s, like whatever, and the second one was like 3 years after that. And my father fired me, and he was
I was
just
going to
like,
say, I'm sure your father really appreciated you dropping in when you were desperate. That's just really good. That's just the kind of employee everybody wants to have.
yeah. By the second time, like, he's like, no, no, like, forget it. Just go back to writing. Something will happen,
Right.
And
Yeah, you've proven
and
it.
it was a good move because I did, things started happening again or
That's how
whatever.
you proved you were a writer at heart, by being a complete waste product when it came to actually holding down a job.
Yeah, and I've always been like one of those guys. It's like, oh, have money, spend money, have money, spend money. Never like, oh, let's put this away for the rainy day, and
Right.
because this is a business that's like this, and you're gonna have,
Well,
no.
look, even Stephen King had a real job for a couple of years. He was a
Did he?
teacher,
Oh,
and
all
then
right,
he was a teacher, and he I think he had a deal for Carrie. I think it was Doubleday that published Carrie. Of course, that was before my time at Doubleday, but and by the time I was there, he was being published by somebody else. I
okay,
think, but I can't remember who. But anyway, but he was working as a school teacher. He wrote Carrie, uh, got published. I don't remember what the deal was with that deal, but the big deal was that he got a mass market paperback sale, and he got a call from his agent that they did this mass market paperback sale. And if I remember correctly, it was $250,000.
right.
And that was back in the day when $250,000
That's huge.
meant something, because, like, what we're talking about,
'70s,
70s or something, right? And then he quit his job. He was like,
right?
"This is great. I can quit my job." And he
Yep.
started cracking out words. And it's interesting. I just saw this thing. What is this vigilante crime and pulp? I've suddenly start getting in my inbox. Who's writing that?
That was okay. So let's go back to True Pulp. Our
Yeah,
True
because I
Pulp.
want to talk about noir a little bit.
It started. Troy and I were approached by them, it, and by vigilante crime. I'm not going to mention names or anything like that, but,
Okay,
but
but
we were approached by the organization, let's say, vigilante crime,
okay,
and to do this stuff, and I was to be like an editor. It's sort of a name only, they wanted the cred and all that sort of stuff,
right.
and I was happy to work with them because I love those guys, I still do, and they're good guys. And I was like, well, we really need, when we started talking about the nuts and bolts of the project, I'm like, well, we really need, like a professional editor to come on board because that no one in this conversation is a professional editor, really. So I suggested Troy because I've worked with Troy in the past. And he said, great. And so we had a meeting. And at the end of the meeting, like Troy and I spoke afterwards, and we were like, well, they kind of want us to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And there's no guarantee we're going to make any money off of it. Right. And so we were like, well, we're going to back out. We're going to back out. But on the other hand, we're going to do our own anthology, sorry,
Right.
but,
so that somehow must be how I ended up on the mailing list. And I have to say, whoever's writing these, I don't know if they're daily or a few times a week, whatever, these emails that they send, this sort of writing about noir and stuff like that is really smart, and they're well written, and
they're good.
And good books. And they had one recently, whoever wrote it was writing about how, the efficiency with which old noir was written, and how a lot of those books were really, pretty short books. They were, 50,000 word books. What happened? Like, why did popular fiction get so, porked up, right? And I think of Stephen King a little bit because, with all respect to Stephen King, one of the greatest ever, his books are long, and I've had conversations like editor to editor over the years. People say, he's too big, like, to edit, so nobody's going to say, Stephen, we can cut 40,000 words out of this, and no, he's untouchable, and he's earned it. He deserves to be untouchable. But there was this trend, I think when and this article was pointing out, and I would expound on it, that when the big chain stores, when Barnes and Noble in particular, but Borders and some others, exploded, and you had these big publishers got really corporate. They stopped being sort of family-owned businesses and whatnot, and they had this relationship. And it became the age of really what I would call the mass market hardcover, right? Where they realized, well, if we could sell, 50,000 copies of the hardcover and 2 million copies of the mass market paperback, what if we could sell 1 million copies of the hardcover, instead, right? To set that up, and it's a much bigger profit margin, right? But those books needed to have a value proposition, and if it was, a 50,000 word thing, it didn't look so great on the shelf at Barnes and Noble, especially ends up spying out or whatever. And so heft became sort of its own value proposition. But I just recently, so this vigilante thing, they recommended some book by some writer I'd never heard of, but his name was Lionel White, and the book was called Killer. Although apparently it changed title for some reason. I don't know, maybe because Martin Scorsese did a movie about it, based on it, apparently. And it's a really, I didn't count up the words, but my guess is it's probably like a 40,000 word, book, and it was pretty good. It's about a heist of a racetrack.
When was it published?
Published, I think, that's a good question. Well, you know what? I don't know when it was published, because the current, publisher is one of those POD publishers, and they put the year 2013 on it, or 2023 on it, or something like that. It's not the original copyright. Somebody recopied. I don't know what.
Like that's from the 50s or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably from like well,
my guess.
It seems like a little more current. Maybe the 50s, 60s. Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
But anyway, I was like thinking about how, and I'm writing a horror novel now. I finally started to plot it and get it off the ground. And I'm hoping it will be shorter than most. It'll be under my Dana I. Wolf name, because it's horror. And that's the Typhoid Mary book was under that name. And I was thinking about, when I was reading this, and it was pretty good. It wasn't like, James M. Cain. It didn't blow me away, but it was pretty well done. And I was thinking about the violence, and how, like, or even like the moments, that the moments of suspense that the modern suspense writer tends to create now, have like all the sort of amped up, and it's all sort of over the top, and there's a lot of description and of what's going on, and it's like if you had a fight scene, it would be 3 pages,
Right.
just the fight, and now and then in these noir books, the action was very brief, and
Yep.
you were sort of surprised, not just sort of by the violence of it, but by how sort of the suggestion of how banal that violence was, right? And so it would be like one or two. The fight's like 1 or 2 paragraphs long, oh,
Right.
right? Or
Well,
even
you
some
need the filler, man.
shot. It's like one or
Yeah.
two. It's like one paragraph. You shot him, and they, bang bang. Usually a nice turn of phrase,
Right.
and maybe the sound of the gun hitting the floor or whatever.
Right.
And and I think that partly because it fit, the brilliance of it's not a terrible thing to go back to, is that the tension, the violence was, either broke the tension or was sort of the surprise that reminded you of how menacing the situation was or the character was.
Right.
Uh, and the suspense was largely psychological, and it was largely, oh man, this person is a little unhinged. This person's like in this book, not to have a spoiler alert, but probably nobody else is going to read it anyway. That one of the guys who was in on it, who was not a professional criminal, and his wife is a little bit of a grifter, and she like gets wind of it, and you're thinking, oh, she's a low character,
Right.
and let me see how this is going to play out. I know this is going to be trouble. The second you
Right.
realize that the wife is not a good person,
Right.
right? And it starts to, it's just that psychological tension builds, and you don't need a lot of words for that. You know that she's hanging in the background, and once in a while you see her, and she advances her piece of the plot like a little bit, just
Right.
enough to keep you thinking, oh man, how exactly is she going to fuck everybody here?
Right.
Right.
And it, the same can also be said, almost like for the sex scene. I think that one of the greatest, most compact, to the point sex scenes ever written was by James Crumley in, I think, The Last Good Kiss.
The Last Good
No,
Kiss, one of the
no,
best books.
no, it wasn't in The Last Good Kiss. It
Oh
was
no.
in his not his it, a non-crime book, his very first novel, one to call Cadence. And towards the end, his girlfriend and the maid at a hotel or something like that get together, and he just says, we rock and rolled for about an hour,
Right.
and that's it.
That's all you need.
That's the
That's
sex
all you need
scene,
to know.
and it
Right.
describes it perfectly. We rock and rolled for like an hour.
Right.
Like,
And
okay.
by the way, you also don't need to know, like,
I've stolen that line, by the way, like a million times.
did you? Right. Well, why not?
Yeah.
It's hard to trace. But and you didn't need to know why that bad person or flawed person, like every aspect of their childhood.
Right.
There's like no
Yeah.
flashbacks in noir fiction.
I was just
Is there?
about to say,
Right.
there's almost no flashbacks, and if there's a flashback, you might suggest it might be just a suggestion of what this person's past has been and why, especially if it's in the first person, why like maybe he's an unreliable narrator
Right.
today, or maybe unhinged, or something like that. All it takes is a sentence or two, but you don't need to have what John Irving used to call the dreaded flashback chapter,
Right.
or the dreaded backstory chapter, which in Irving's books, like
Right. And
Bible, right?
right. He was writing along too.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah, I think that's part of the beauty of noir is that people in noir are like people you meet, in life,
right.
right? And I once
That's
picked up
what I
somewhere,
think. Yep.
one of the great pieces of writing, advice, and it even applies to people who did write long, people like Dickens or whatever, is that you should get to know people in a novel the way you get to know people in life, where you just find out just enough about them to keep advancing the story, not, oh, this person walks into the room now. Let me tell you their entire life story
Right.
before I tell you what's going to happen next. That's bad writing, right? We all know that is bad writing, although
Right.
people persist on doing it, in doing it because, um, whatever, they don't know any better or whatever. And,
Yep.
or they get away with it,
Yep.
but like in noir, but in real life, even like, I mean, like I've had like, I don't know about you, Vin, but if you asked me when I was 20 years old, I grew up like in a nice family, whatever, and my mother died when I was young, but there was no serious drama that came from people misbehaving, right? But I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it was not something that was on my radar as a kid. And um, and if you would ask me, like when I was 20 or 25 or 18 or whatever, whether I would ever know anybody who was a convicted felon in my life, I'd be like, well, I doubt it. Like, I don't hang out with those people, right?
Yeah.
I know like
In your
5
mind.
convicted felons now.
Yeah.
I mean, none of them are my best friends,
Right.
and but know of like one degree of separation. People
Right.
who've murdered people. People, I mean,
Yeah.
more likely, I know two. I know a Ponzi schemer. Who went away to jail for a long time, and you know, and the thing is, it's sort of like, I always use this just as a somewhat amusing example when people say, "Oh, that guy was such a nice guy." I'm like, "Yeah, OJ was a nice guy, right?" It's like you think you know people, but you don't really know people. And I
No.
think that's so the cool thing about, in noir is you're meeting people the way you meet them in life. And it's sort of like, it's like this guy walked by you on the sidewalk and he's a freaking murderer,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or he walked by you on the sidewalk and he's got like his pants are full of, stolen goods that he just stole around the corner. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't freaking know. That's life. It's happening like all around you, right? And
Yep.
when you touch upon these people, the difference is because you're the reader and you're hearing this particular story, there's that sense of menace,
Right.
right? If you're good at it, right? But it's also, I think part of what it makes it all so menacing is that it's just another day in New York or wherever, or Albany or wherever, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
like it's there. It's just nobody's paying careful attention to it because it didn't involve you, and it involves you because you're reading it.
Right. And I know, at least when I'm doing it, like there's certain situations like I'll write about like certain areas of Albany, for instance, and you know for sure tonight if I'm just to go 3 miles up the road here south into the heart of the city, you're going to hear gunshots, and like don't get out of the car in that area of
Right,
the city because you're liable to get hurt. But I'm desensitized to it. It's just, well, of course it's that way. Um, it doesn't make it any less dangerous.
right.
Um,
I'm like in an exurb of Philadelphia, right? Yeah, on Friday morning.
Philly's tough, right?
Yeah, well, Philly's tough, but I'm in an exurb, right? I mean, but Friday morning, I'm driving to go play tennis with a guy, like 6:45 in the morning, and I'm on sort of the main local road here, so it's just one lane in either direction.
Right,
And oh, what's this? Like usually I don't see anything, right? It's a couple of cars and that's it. Oh, what's this? 2 police cars, local police cars, one on either side of the road with their lights flashing. So of course I slow down, and there's a guy on the ground with no shirt on, with his hands cuffed behind his
cup
back,
behind his back.
right,
Yep.
sitting on the ground. And I'm like, geez, I wonder what happened there, right?
Yeah.
So and I thought, well, I don't think it's an ICE thing because it was the 2 local cops. There was no other
Right.
cars or whatever, right? I go to the gym that afternoon at 4 o'clock, and the guys, like, I don't know what prompted them to tell me, but the gym, there's always so much downtime between sets, and you're always shooting the
Right.
breeze, right? And the guys say, oh, like we had a little excitement this morning. Couple of guys, they're not wearing shirts. They wander in here. They were like drugged up, and I'm like, wait a second. I saw one of those guys get, what time was
Yeah,
that? They're like, oh, it
yeah,
was like 6:30. I'm like, yeah, that would be about the amount of time probably would have taken them to walk a mile down the
yeah,
road where I
yep,
saw one of the guys being arrested,
yeah,
and it all like tied together, right?
yep,
And it was funny because, if you're gonna go try to strong arm, somebody walking into a gym where like the guy who runs the place, the head trainer was a linebacker at Pitt.
wow,
He's like a massively like built dude with a
yep,
short temper, nicest guy in
yeah,
the world, but a short
right,
temper.
right,
And the guy and
because he
one
can
of the guys
afford to have a
says,
short temper.
one of the guys apparently said to him, "Oh, can you give me some money?" And he says to him, "I can give you some money. I have money, but I'm not giving you some money."
Yeah, yeah,
Just like that, like you know,
yeah,
I'm
right,
not even going to pretend I don't have money. I'm just
right,
going to dare you to try to take it from me,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Which in itself, there's a great scene you can write.
You're
You
right.
know,
It's all material, isn't it?
it's all material. It's all
Right.
material. I lost my, tangentially speaking, I lost my cell phone the other day. I'm not even sure. It was one of those like I went to the bar after writing and had my one beer and like I had like one of my it was one of the steamy days, so I had like one of my fly fishing shirts on with the
Mm.
pockets and stuff, so eyeglasses here, sunglasses, whatever, and I have my cell phone here, like a real nerd, right? And so anyway, but I know where my shit is. So I get home and I'm like, where the fuck's my cell phone?
Oh, it's
And
yeah.
I check, I get out of the Jeep, I'm checking under the seat, I'm checking the glove, like places I know where it's not, but then shit shows up. And I had gone into the house first. With some groceries. Okay, I went back out to the Jeep. Anyway, and I'm like, God damn it, I must have left it at the bar. So like, I get back in the Jeep, go back, to the bar, and you always feel like an idiot. And I'm like, Ruddy's the bartender's name. I'm like, did I leave my phone? And he's like, no, I don't think so, dude. And of course, like, some bar flies are like, oh yeah, here it is, and they're like,
Oh,
showing me their phone, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hit one of these guys.
oh,
But
right.
anyway,
Thanks. You
and
needed that,
yeah,
right?
I'm like, yeah, and so he's like, no, and so I go back home, and my son's out. My son was hanging out, and I was like, call my phone, just without.
Right.
Calls the phone. I left it in the kitchen, and like
The whole time.
where I put it the first time around, right?
Right.
But anyway, it that's not even really the point. The point is that, and this gets back to noir and the stuff that happens, like that comes from our brain. But it disturbed me. It disturbed me that I was so upset that thought I lost my cell phone. I mean, I'm like throwing out the C word, the F word,
Right.
like,
Right.
you know, uh, you know, um, and it disturbed me. I'm like, I should not be that upset if I do happen to lose my cell phone. Everything's in the cloud. I just might have to buy another one. I didn't buy insurance on it, but whatever. Um, but I honestly think at this point that losing my wallet would be less traumatic. Just call the bank, cancel the credit cards, and
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
Um, and so I just started writing a story about a commuter. I just call it the commuter for now. And he wakes up on the train, because he's tired. And he just happens to be not a writer anymore. He's a content creator. But his salary keeps going down because his boss keeps telling him, like, well, clients are choosing AI. Sorry.
Right. Nice.
We still have a few clients that want the human touch, and which is actually something that's happened to me. But
Oh yeah,
and
it's
so
happening.
anyway, yeah, and so he's stressed out, but he loses his cell phone, and the whole story. I think it's going to be just a short story, but the whole story is about him unraveling on the commuter train over losing his cell phone, and
Yeah.
how he really starts losing it on the train, and almost becoming psycho. You know, um,
Right.
and I kind of know what the ending is. I don't want to commit to it though. But that's the kind of story that appeals to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
when
I
it comes
think
to
that's a
noir,
great, that's a
because you
great
had
beginning.
mentioned everyday people and the things that everyday people go through. Like one of my stories is I dinged some dude's car or truck. Luckily, it didn't leave a mark, but I was like, if I ding this guy's truck and it makes a mark, I go in the bar and he's like, "Who the fuck ding?" Like that. That's fodder for a story. You
Right.
know,
I've always thought it's probably a story I'll never write, so I can give it away if as far as it goes. But I always thought it'd be a great beginning of a story. Like, it's just an ordinary guy at the gym. He picks up a wallet, and for whatever reason, he decides to keep it on an impulse or whatever, and it turns out to be like some mafioso's like wallet or something
yeah,
like that. But he's
right,
completely fucked himself with this
yep,
just simple, impulsive.
yep. Oh, we were going so well there. We were going so well. Must be his storm. I bet you some lightning hit. But Joel brings up a great point, man. Anything is fodder for a story, for a noir story. It's all about the human condition, the everyday man or woman, their human condition. Like, what's another one I wrote that was based on a real event? In my old girlfriend and I we were in the grocery store after having a drink or two at the local bar, and I ran my shopping cart into this other dude who, speaking of gyms, had been at the gym. He's in his gym clothes. And we joked about it, and I just said, "Hope you have insurance and all this sort of stuff." And on the way home, it dawned on me, like, what if this guy was like, a psycho? What if, like, after we, checked out our stuff and went outside, he was waiting for us and just like, apologize? And you'd be like, "What? Apologize for what happened in there?" And then what if it goes up another level and like he follows you as you pull out of the parking lot and follows you on the way home? Like, what do you do? Do you go home and confront this guy again, or do you keep going? So I wrote a novel over that one. What the hell is it called? Oh, Her Darkest Secret. Available www.vinzandry.com. I think Down and Out published it. But Her Darkest, or was now I'm confused. Her Darkest Secret might have actually been the one where the dude wakes up on a train. I don't know. Anyway, just go to my website and you'll find it. But it's these little stories like that, or these little incidents that occur every day that is fodder for a novel. To me, it happens like 100 times a day. Something will make a really good story. The stuff you have to invent that takes more time and a little more effort in terms of creativity are like the horror novels, like my Max Gator novel, um, which is on its way to Hollywood right now. Don't know if it's going to sell, but I know it's on its way. Um, yep, here comes Fish. One last time. All right, brother, we better start wrapping this up because
Yeah, I know that was definitely on my end. We're having all these storms, and I don't know. Yeah, this is the future, man.
but
This
I
is
was
like
just
about this in my sci-fi novel.
I think in fact I was just talking to the audience while you were going how like in a way writing noir for me anyway is a little bit easier because I can take these little everyday experiences and write a story or a novella or a 50,000 word novel about it sometimes. But what takes a little more creativity is like my horror novels like Max Gator. Yeah, you got to really create, you got to create everything for that. Or like the Chase Baker novels, I have to do some research for that. Sometimes on-site research. Um, it takes more effort to write those novels. Certainly, to go back to your Typhoid Mary, you had to do a certain amount of research for that.
I did do research for that.
It
All kidding
shows,
aside.
yeah, and it shows, and so
And it was interesting, by the way, doing that research. But I didn't do. The difference, I guess, as a novelist is you don't have to like do primary research.
right,
Like if you were sitting down writing a nonfiction, you'd feel like, oh, I got to go back to some archives and stuff like that versus, as you suggest, you taking stuff up on the internet, and even if maybe have to read a book or two, but it's not
Yeah.
not the same as like having to go go to Widener Library looking for some
Right.
copy of
Right.
some document or
Sure. I
something
wrote
like
my
that.
I wrote my very first novel. I mean, the one that was my creative thesis for school, for writing school, which became The Innocent. And
Right.
was I wrote that novel in a library because there was internet, plug in the internet, but it just I needed a library behind me to research the damn thing. And I did some on-site visits at prisons and stuff like that. But those days are over.
For
You really
you.
don't need it for
I
me
mean,
anyway.
people
Yeah,
do.
I mean,
But
I like the trips and stuff, but
like David Morrell, the great novelist who created Rambo,
Rambo,
with his first novel, amazingly enough. Um,
right?
his first novel, which he'd be the first to tell you, went through like a lot of drafts and ended up being cut down. I mean, interestingly enough, that's another great example of sort of economy,
First
because
Blood,
he does tell a story about how the novel was, I don't know how much longer, but considerably longer, and it was a bit of a mess. And I think somebody suggested, look, just cut to the heart, just write the story thread and leave everything else out, backstory, the whole thing,
right?
and see what you have. And what he had was one of the most influential novels ever written, right? Anyway,
I know.
he loves to still like research. Like he'll like, if he's got if he's one of those guys who feels like if he's going to write about a pilot, he's going to, get a.
Uh-oh, we lost them again. Uh-oh. David Morrell, First Blood. All right. Well, when we get Fish back this time, we're gonna cut it. We got like a lot of material here, right? You get an idea of what Fish is all about. Fish and I could talk forever, um, and we often do, uh, because he kind of like, or he's one of two people I know who has been an agent, an editor for a major house, and a well-published best-selling author. So he's got that trifecta. Um, so definitely check out his books. Dana Wolf and Joel Fishman. Just Google Joel Fishman and you'll find him. Um, let's see if he comes back one last time. I'll give it a minute. And so is everybody working this week, or is this like a vacation week? Because like I noticed like there's hardly any book sales today. Like I'm like, where is everybody? I'm guessing everybody's on vacation. Writers, see, we're always like on vacation, but not on vacation. You know what I mean? We work, but we're also retired. If you get my meaning. Anyway, let's see if Fish comes back. Give it a few seconds. I can tell it's about to storm here pretty quick too. Let's see. Here he is again, one more time.
This is turning into a technological disaster, but
All right, Fish, you better tell me like where people can contact you.
talk about disruption, right?
It could be coming from my end now because we're about to get it.
Now it was my thing again because I had to reset. Anyway,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
listen, I wanted to say thank you for including me in this project. I'm so looking forward to reading the other stories. I feel a little bit jealous that you and Troy have already had the opportunity to read the other stories.
Yeah, they're all good. They're all good. Everybody stepped up to the plate.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah. So I think that it's going to be very successful. We'd love to have you on the next one, of course. And
love to do it. I don't know, romance. That's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that.
Well, think about it in terms of like the true romance movie. Like that. I'm going to write about like Bonnie and Clyde.
Right. Romance crime.
Right.
Yeah. So,
exactly.
but I don't know when I cut off, but because I just do want to say, if you didn't hear me, what I was saying about David Morrell is,
Right.
because I don't want to leave that hanging in case anybody listens this deep, is he's one of those guys, if he's going to write about a private pilot, he's going to go get his pilot's license. That's
Right.
like a
Yep.
level of
Yep.
commitment, you know,
Right. Right.
so there are people who do commit to deep research for novels still. Whether it's
Right.
necessary is one of those things
Right.
that can be
The
endlessly.
only deep research I really do is for the Chase Baker books, because like, who doesn't want to go to Morocco or
Like you
Egypt
go to
and all
Egypt
that
and
stuff?
whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, it's fun. Like,
Yeah, right. Why? No, and you definitely do see things that sort of a light bulb goes off. You know, my first
absolutely.
novel, my first novel, Primacy, part of it is set in.
Yeah, we lost him again. All right, this time I'm going to sign off first. Like I said, I'm speaking on behalf of Fish. Just Google Joel Fishman, and you will find everything of his, and also his Dana White, or his Dana Wolf books, and he will be featured in True Pulp. You'll get a link down below, a link for the Kickstarter. You'll get a link for Joel's email down there, and website rather, I should say. And that's it. Thanks for joining this episode of The Writer's Life, and I'll see you on the next one.